So let's look at what makes up a hypertext markup file. And now a hypertext markup file contains hypertext markup language. And what we typically do to a text document to add formatting and style to it is we add markup, we add this HTML. HTML is an example of one particular markup language. There are loads of different markup languages out there. When you see them, you'll see they're styled in very similar ways, but hypertext markup languages is the one that we use specifically for web pages. So just a quick simple example, if we want to insert markup into a document, what we do is we insert these things that are called tags. So I'm going to just give you a quick example here of inserting a tag which is called the emphasis tag. Now you can see the emphasis tag here. It consists of a less than symbol, and then you can see we've got EM and then a greater than symbol. That's called a tag, and what we do is by placing that inside a text document, we can change the way that text document is presented inside a browser. We can change the way it behaves, if you like. So here's some text. Now if you look closely, you can see that what I've effectively done is I've wrapped up the words in emphasis in tags. Now the first one, where you can see we've got the less than symbol and then an EM and then a greater than symbol, that's called our starting tag. What it indicates is that from this point onwards, the text that follows after this point will be styled in a particular way. It will be styled in emphasis. And what that translates to inside a browser is it's displayed in italics. And if you travel along and you look at the end of the words in emphasis, you'll see a closing tag. Now the closing tag stops that presentation style from being applied. And the way that we know that's a closing tag is because it's got inside, can you see it's got that /. So when we place tags inside a text document, when we're placing HTML inside a text document, most of the time we'll be placing them in pairs, and you'll be placing a starting tag and a closing tag. And what that's going to do is that's going to wrap up some words, and the style, the formatting style, is going to be applied to everything that occurs between those 2 points, between that starting tag and that closing tag. And you can see that in the second paragraph there, where it says here's some text, and you can see the words in emphasis are displayed in italics. So if we showed that, if we brought that up inside a web browser, that's exactly how it would be presented. And that's how we add structure and design to a document. We add tags to the plain text document, and more often than not, they are actually in this form. You can see we've got a tag, an opening tag, and then we've got a closing tag, and the closing tag is indicated with a /. Now, formally, these things are actually called elements in markup languages, but I'll just call them tags in this session. And of course, now what a lot of people do is they confuse adding markup into a text document as if you were programming. That's not programming. Programmers actually create and write software. This is more like, I would say it's more like authoring, really. What we're doing is we're creating web pages with content and we're styling them in a particular way, so that when they're presented in a web browser, they are shown in a particular style or way. Now HTML documents have a particular style and structure, so let's have a look at that. So there are a number of different tags that I'm about to show you here. So an HTML document has an HTML opening tag and an HTML closing tag, and you can see the closing tag is at the bottom because it's got a / in it. And what that does is that indicates to the browser, which is going to be processing this text file, where the start of the document is, and obviously where the end of the document is, the start of the HTML and the end of the HTML. Now, all HTML documents have two basic parts. They have what's known as a head, and they have what's known as a body. So we'll do the body in a minute. There's the body. So we've got HTML tags around the outside, and then we have a head, and then we have a body. There's only ever one head, and there's only ever one body inside an HTML document. So you should always follow this style, have these tags. So you can see we've got opening tags, we've got closing tags, we've got a head at the top, and we've got a body down the bottom. So we don't actually need to have a head, but most HTML documents will have a head section inside the HTML. More often than not, what actually goes inside the head is information about the document. So it might be information like when we created the file, or other links to other bits of information that this file will need to do its work. Often that information is called sort of meta information about the document. And things that we put inside the head are never normally displayed. I mean, there is one thing that we can put in there, which is the title tag, and the title tag will be displayed inside the browser on the tab or in the header of the window. But nearly everything that we put inside the head isn't actually shown. Here's an example of something that you could put in the head. You could add a comment. So, for example, you could put something about when the file was actually created. Now, you can put comments wherever you like inside an HTML file, but you do need to bear in mind that anything between these 2 points won't actually be processed if you put them in correctly. The notation, the syntax we use here is a little bit odd, but basically you use a less than symbol, an exclamation mark and 2 dashes, and anything after that point will simply be ignored by the browser. So you could have lots and lots of lines here, and then what you do is you terminate that comment. You say this is the point where the comment will be stopped by using 2 dashes and then a greater than symbol. So any lines that you place between those 2 points simply won't be displayed. So for example, what we could do is in the head, you could put a comment basically saying who created this file and when it was created, just like that. And that information won't be visible when the page is displayed because it's been commented out. If you look a little bit lower, you can see there's a title tag, welcome to my web page. So you can put whatever words you like between the title tags, but you can see how the title tag and the comment have both been placed inside the head part of the document. So moving on to the body. Now the body part of the document, this is where we'll be placing the content that we actually wish to be displayed inside the browser window. So nearly everything that we want to actually appear in the window will go between these 2 points inside the body part. And there's a whole bunch of different tags that we can use here. We can use heading tags, H1 through to H6, paragraphs, things like strong and emphasis. So let's just quickly go through some of those. Heading tags are rendered from large to small, and we number them like this. So an H1 heading is the most important heading that we have, and when that's displayed inside a browser window, that typically would be presented in large text. And then a slightly smaller text heading would be an H2. And when we display that inside the browser, you'll see the font is a little bit smaller. It's less important. Let's say that you were constructing a document which actually had another subheading, then you would go an H3. And you go on, carry on like that. You can only go up to 6, and of course, it's very unusual to be structuring a document which has 6 levels of subheadings. So you might have, for example, an H1, and then a subheading, an H2, and then some text. Then you might have another H2, and then some text. And then you might have another section, so you'd have an H1, something like that. So that's how you do your headings. How do you do paragraphs? Well, we wrap paragraphs up inside paragraph tags. So we use a P and we use a /P to indicate the end. Notice how we have opening and closing tags for headings, of course. So here you can see I've got a heading called important heading. And what I've done is I've wrapped that up inside an H1. And I've got 2 paragraphs. And when we display that, what will happen is the browser will process the fact that there are paragraphs here, and it will insert a little bit of space between the paragraphs to make it read nicely. 2 other tags that I just want to mention here, strong and emphasis. And emphasis, that does an italic, and you can see here I've got the word one in italics. So you can see I've got an opening emphasis tag and a closing emphasis tag. And then I've got strong. What strong does is it presents something in bold. So you can see that the word not is presented in a bold style. Again, I've got the opening and I've got the closing tags. As I've indicated, most elements, most tags, when you place them, they will have a starting tag and an ending tag, and it's very important that you remember to put the ending tags in. using that /. And all the tags that we'll be looking at and using at the start of this course will be placed in pairs, but some don't. These are called empty elements. Here's an example of one which actually inserts an image, and we'll come back to this next time. Now, formally, we would say that the actual text which is placed inside the tag, so between the less than and the greater than symbol, that's called the label of the tag. And obviously what happens, of course, is the browser processes the label and it has built-in code, so it understands what an H1 does, how an H1 should be presented when it presents the text inside a browser window. One of the final things I will say is that HTML, when it was originally designed, it was all about formatting plain text, and the initial browsers were very, very simple, and there was no guarantee, and in fact that's still true, there is no real guarantee that you know what the browser will be running on, which device the browser will be running on. Will it be running on a big screen in a shop window? Will it be running on a laptop or computer? Will it be running on a mobile device? So often you don't know how wide the window will be, how wide the paragraph will actually be. So actually styling a document is not quite as straightforward as just sort of putting loads of paragraphs in. Those elements like headings and paragraphs are important, but you see that when it comes to actually doing the kind of fine grain presentation styles that you're interested in, well, what we'll do is that's when we'll talk about this thing called cascading style sheets, but we won't be talking about that for the moment.